Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Inside the Chamber. I'm your host, Darian Marion Burton, and today we're joined by the revolutionary Trent Stoner, owner of the new CrossFunction co-working space in the iconic Boulevard Arcade building. Trent, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Darren. It's a pleasure.
So this is actually my second time recording in person. We just did Jeff Long from FFC in person, but this is a different level of podcasting for me. I'm sitting in the new recording studio here at CrossFunction. Trent, tell me about this space and just all the work that went into getting this designed and put up.
First of all, thank you. Appreciate your enthusiasm. We're equally excited. We inherited a great space. This building, the studio that we're in, we didn't build it. We'd like to think that we're just polishing it off and hopefully making it a little bit better for today than maybe it was just a few days ago. But until you come in and see it, it's really hard to fairly judge it, I
Yeah.
would say.
No, I totally agree. It's great. And I want to talk so much about this space. But before we jump into talking about all the great things here, I want to get to know you. I'm always interested in understanding what people's journeys are and how they got to this exact moment and sitting in this chair with me. So tell me a little bit about what your professional career was before you started this business and how'd you get here?
Well, prior to starting CrossFunction, I spent about 20 years in the tire and automotive business, not by plan. I think a lot of us fall into careers. I studied journalism at Indiana University and wanted to be the next Bob Costas, sports broadcaster. And while I worked in that field for a short time after college, a friend of my father's who had started this tire an automotive company up in Minneapolis plucked me away, kind of money whipped me. It showed me a way I could pay off my loans really quick. And so I thought, well, I'll try this for a little while. And then I woke up and it was 20 years later. And I spent the last half of that 20 years working for Bridgestone and Firestone and had some wonderful experiences in marketing, advertising, and in the latter years, brand strategy. But I have being an entrepreneur is in my blood. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My uncle was an entrepreneur. Both of them very successful. Have another uncle on the other side of my family who's a successful entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur for a short time, and then the recession of the '80s kind of wiped his business out a little bit. Oddly enough, we're in a terrible time in our lives and in our history as it relates to business and health. But it's always been in my blood, always something I wanted to do. Even my mentor, the guy that got me involved in the tire business, I watched him from afar and how he built that business into something so spectacular that the big company like Bridgestone, a Fortune 100 company, thought enough of it to buy it out. And so that's was always my plan. I just didn't know when it was going to start.
It's crazy you say that there's just something in your blood about being entrepreneurial. I think back to when I decided to start my business and I'd lost my job in corporate America due to a really great golf outing at the chamber.
There's a
And
story there.
there's a great story there that I tell way too much probably. But I sat down and I was like, what do I want to do? It was go back to the buzz and start a business. Start a business. Go work at a high end restaurant while starting a business. And I quickly was like, all right, so clearly I want to start a business. And if you would have told me like 5 years ago that this is what I would have been doing, I would have been like, you're crazy. I was going to work in higher education, student affairs. After that, I was in fintech for a little while. And now I feel like I'm finally like where I'm supposed to be. So it really resonates with me. So tell everybody who doesn't know what cross function is, how does it work, what is co-working. I think our listeners have a lot of questions about this as more traditional business owners.
Okay, well, first of all, I just want a cross-function, flexible workspace.
Okay.
So yeah, we are co-working, but we like to think of ourselves as a little more than co-working. Co-working often, people that are familiar with it, and a lot aren't, we can talk about that, but people that are familiar with it quickly go to places like WeWork, who really have pioneered the category, but we're a lot different from them. We like to think of ourselves as boutique office share. Boutique in the sense of like Ian Schrager, the popular hotel pioneer, where every location is kind of unique and charming and different. And that's what we aspire to be. First and foremost, we're a real estate company. our goal was to find rich, unique real estate that in and of itself has a story, and that we can come along and kind of maybe help write the next chapter of that story. And we've certainly done that here with our first project in Oak Park at the Boulevard Arcade.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Now I feel like I want somebody to go back and edit out every time I say co-working.
Well, you did ask about, that's okay. It's okay. Popular buzzword. You asked how it worked. I mentioned Schrager in the hotel industry. It works a little like a hotel in that you show up and everything's kind of provided for you.
Okay.
We are fully furnished, fruitful amenities. You come in with your laptop and your phone and you're ready to work here at CrossFunction. It also works a little bit like a health and fitness club in that we don't require long-term commitments as traditional office space does. It's short and it's flexible. So most folks who've maybe joined a health club or maybe even a country club or some sort of club do so on an annual basis, and you can do that here for the best value. But you're not locked in. There are ways that you can exit the agreement, and if you want to stay and scale up or scale down, we accommodate that as well. So that's where the whole flexible workspace kind of comes in. We have about 75% of our space is private offices. So there's a lot more private office that caters maybe a little bit more to small business. Where in traditional co-working, you have big, huge spaces where everyone just kind of jumps in the gallery and works and maybe sits at a different seat every day. We have some of that, but that's not our core. Our core is the private office, the meeting space. And then, of course, we talked about the studio. That's a little different niche that we have.
I love it. I love it. So why this business? I think looking around at the tire industry, this is a complete jump from that.
Purposely.
I mean, tires do sound very boring. So why this industry?
Well, yeah, tires was a big surprise. Remember I said I studied journalism. I had a lot of fun in that business. We made it a lot of fun. The great thing about that business is, as long as there's cars and vehicles, there's tires, there's a need for it. So there was security in that. But it's a low interest category. People walk into the tire store and about the only worse is walking into the dentist office. It's a painful experience for a lot of people. And I was surprised I was able to do it as long as I could or did, because trying to make that experience pleasant and happy for people is a heck of a challenge. This, on the other hand, I mean, not that everyone wants to come to work, but to come to work in a place like this and to have great service surrounding you, that's a much higher interest category, and we're thrilled to do it. I didn't set out to get into this. I mentioned I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was in my blood. I set out to get into the event and business meeting business. In my career at Bridgestone, I was fortunate enough to put on a lot of different types of events, business and sales meetings, large conventions, and a lot of corporate hospitality. So I would do everything from a sales meeting for 25 to 30 people to hosting 5,000 people at the Indy 500, or not all by myself. I'd have a lot of help. But we just did all kinds of different events and hospitality, and I loved it and I excelled at it. Even though it wasn't a core KPI of my job, I often used it and the success of those events to, further my performance reviews at the end of the year with my boss. I just loved doing it. And so when I decided to walk away from that, I started looking for real estate that we could do business meetings, events, social events. And I ended up having all these meetings in co-working spaces and shared office spaces. And finally one day it just kind of dawned on me that, all these people that are officing in these great businesses, they're coming every week, every day. Mm-hmm. That's a much shorter putt than having to sell events over and over and over and over again. So it just, from a revenue standpoint, it made a lot of sense to me. But you could still do some business meetings and events with the right space. So I pivoted, and here we are.
I love that. I think the best thing about our business model is the recurring revenue. Yeah. And then also that the ability to do those one-off projects. As you were talking, One thing that you said that really resonated with me was that you're in all these co-working spaces, and I've spent a lot of time in co-working spaces all throughout Oak Park and in the city. What do you think really makes cross function different? I think I have some idea of that. Just being in here today and the last time I was here, I think that everything that you do is hands on. It's white glove service. I mean, I'm drinking my water with a coaster under it, and I have my own personal bottle of hand sanitizer. That's good service. So, what is it that's so different about you guys?
Well, broadly, it's the location. And I don't just mean the building. This, we're on the city beltway. We're not in the city. Most of these great co-working and shared office spaces, are in the cities and frankly in the sexy cities across the country. They haven't even made their way to a lot of the second cities and third cities yet. But so we're not downtown, so that in that way we're different, but we're tightly connected to downtown by the railway. And that was purposeful. That was part of our plan. And then obviously more specifically, it's this property. We have the entire building. If you happen to go to a lot of co-working spaces, oftentimes it's one level or one floor of a building where we have the entire building to call your office home. And the fact that this particular building is so rich in history, it's a historical landmark. For some of your listeners who don't know, the Boulevard Arcade never used to be a place to play pinball or shoot pool. It was a place where back in the day, shopped, and more specifically, women shopped. It was a boutique shopping mall that catered to women. There were hat stores and glove stores, makeup, lingerie. There was even on the main floor a furrier. And to this day, in our main conference room, we have the vault door from where the furrier stored the furs for folks. So very, very different type of environment. And I think that is what makes us stand out.
Yeah, I love it. Do you think that co-working, and I know that you guys are more of a flexible workspace, but the idea of shared workspace in general, do you think it's becoming an oversaturated environment? I think about, just in the downtown Oak Park area alone, there are three co-working spaces. How do you compete against people who are offering such a similar service to you in such close proximity?
Well, it's not saturated at all. In fact, it's just the opposite. Here's a statistic that really kind of got me going when I was doing the research. Currently, less than 3% of all office space is co-working or shared.
Okay.
Less than 3%. But it's growing at an incredible rate. I mean, it was less than 1% 2 years ago. The prediction is that by 2030, it'll be at least 20% of all office space, maybe 30%. So the fact that we've got two or three other folks doing this in Oak Park is great. We need 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 more to kind of catch up with the rate of what's happening inside the city and downtown. And the reason is because it just affords big business and small business, even individual entrepreneurs or freelancers or consultants, an opportunity to walk in to an amazing space, have everything provided for them, get their work done, hopefully join a rich community, and really grow and build their business, and then grow their office space as their business grows. Or if in fact hard times come, like what's happening right now, you can back out or scale down. The flexibility of that is what is really driving the category, and why I think if we have this conversation a few years from now, there will be maybe a dozen places like this in villages like Oak Park, and certainly it'll spread to cities and communities around, because it's just such a great way to office.
Yeah. You said you can come in and just work, and you can scale with your business. And I think a lot about how we make decisions at DM Burton, and I'm like, is it scalable? Like, if I do it, can I do it when I have 100 people, and can I do it when it's just me?
Right.
And I love that. And as a creative, I think especially environment is so important to what I do. the ability just to walk into a place. And, I walked into this place and I was like, wow, like I can just like see this working for me, right? Like there's that
We've got
atmosphere.
space for you,
Oh,
Darren. We've got space.
I was talking with our operations director this morning. Um, I definitely, and I think this is a really great segue into talking about entrepreneurship and the idea of working from home becoming so prevalent. Before the pandemic, I worked from home. It was fine. I mean, we went to a coffee shop every once in a while, like, but I don't think I think I managed to not do the bulk of my work at home still. And now that I'm at home all the time, I like want to throw my computer against the wall half the day. And I think it's so great that we have these spaces. So I'm curious how the idea of working from home has changed how you guys think about things. Are you seeing an uptick in people who maybe used to work in the city and now have a corporate office and had a corporate office and now are working from home and don't want to be at home?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. Not to be overly statistical, but less than 5% of people in America work from home pre-pandemic. Closer to 20% of the people work from home every once in a while, maybe as much as once a week, but less than 5% work from home all the time. And now it's like 80-90% of people are working from home all the time.
Yeah.
That's a shock to the system, our own individual systems, and just our the home system itself. Those that are in the home that aren't used to having you be there working, right? So yeah, we've gotten a lot of interest. There's been a lot of stuff written too, just about this boomerang from, wow, working at home is kind of cool. This is great. I can stay in my jammies all day or my activewear. I don't have to get dressed up, or I don't have to comb my hair. I don't have to shower if I don't want to shower. But it starts to change, and it has started to change. Now people are looking for an oasis from the home office.
Yes.
And so we've gotten some calls, and we've given some tours to some people who are who are looking for that oasis. And one of the things that we've done that we didn't plan to do was offer a virtual membership. So we have a package that we've put together, post-COVID or since COVID started, where you can get a private office for 5 or 10 days a month. And then you can also pick up 5 or 10 hours of meeting room space that you schedule just whenever you want, first come, first serve. And so that gives people who are working from home and who may need to work from home because they've got children, they're homeschooling, that is created a whole nother dynamic. They may need to be at home, but they have the means to get away 1 or 2 days a week. So we've offered that. But I do think that once we kind of get past this horrible time in our history and things start to get back to a new normal, the new normal will still include the home office. A lot of people that work in corporate America will find that corporations are changing, that they're not going to occupy as much real estate as they used to, and they'll probably be covering expenses for people to find other place to office. And that bodes really, really well for the shared office and co-working industry.
I definitely am at that point where, so I think I was at this point pre-COVID, and I think COVID has just exacerbated my desire to not stay in my house all day. Um, it's a real pain point actually. So, as an entrepreneur, transitioning from corporate America can be kind of scary. I think it was 2 weeks into not having a job that I realized I also don't get a paycheck and the money doesn't like magically replenish itself. So how do you knowingly step away from a stable paycheck and start your own thing? And what advice do you kind of have for people who may be thinking that?
Well, I totally feel what you were saying. It is daunting. And if it weren't so daunting, I probably would have done it a lot sooner. It's easy to get comfortable working for a great company, the pay, the benefits, the team that you work with. I really thought maybe 5-10 years ago that I would finish my career with Bridgestone and maybe retire early and then do something. I was that comfortable. But after several moves and a family that was growing and getting tired of moving, and we were faced with another move from the Chicago area, my family just said, "No, Dad, we don't want to go." And so it pushed me to make a change. And fortunately for us, I had been working for a number of years and had acquired a little bit of savings. And then after having 20 years combined with Bridgestone, I had a pretty good exit package. And that really made it possible. It really did. And then it afforded me the time to figure out what I wanted to do. I know not everybody has that situation. And I can even feel it now in that we were supposed to have this conversation, Darian, back in May. Because CrossFunction was supposed to open May 1.
Yeah.
And as we're really not opening until September 1. We're renting space, we're doing some things, but we're not bringing in office members until next month. And even that has a governor on it, right? Because we're restricted on how many people can come in, and the rules have all changed. And these last few months have been a little bit more stressful. We've had to be very, very careful with our dollars and to be able to navigate this. And hopefully, we can navigate through the end of it and come out with some momentum.
Yeah. Navigating is it's a tricky thing. I think I check my bank account now more than COVID. I'm like, all right, so like, did I forget about a bill? Like, I know everything's Gucci. I know there's money, but like, just in case, I forgot that we had to pay the hosting for somebody, and $300 comes out of the account. I just prefer to know that like before it happens.
Indeed.
So, what was your first kind of, oh shit, this could work moment? I feel like I have those once every like 3 months. I'm like, oh shit, that was a great idea you had 3 months ago there, Darian.
I can think of two. One I kind of already mentioned when I was talking about statistics, but when I started diving into the research on co-working and the impact it was having on just standard office, I was like blown away. I said, man, this is a train moving down the track, but it's not going so fast that I can't get on it. So that was number one. Number two was the first investor meeting I had. So we went out and raised some capital to be able to, afford a place like this and to start the way we wanted to start. And we had a vision. And from the very first investor meeting, and I was just as nervous as can be because I've never like raised capital before. And at the end of the meeting, the gentleman asked me what my timing, when was I looking to start collecting checks? And I said, well, the sooner the better, but we're looking to raise for about 45 days, about 6 weeks. He goes, well, I'm in. It's just trying to decide at what level. And I almost just kind of fell off my chair because I wasn't expecting it to be, received as well as it did. So that was the second one.
No.
And by the way, he was in, and he ultimately wrote the first check. It was amazing memory. I'll never forget it.
That's exciting. Fundraising scares the absolute crap out of me. I'm not good at asking people for things. Mm-hmm. Like, I could pitch a business all day. That's so easy to me. In fact, very similar to, I think my first this is going to work is we won a $30,000 contract, and it was the first contract I'd ever pitched. And I was like, all right, well, if I can do that, it's going to be a pretty good cakewalk from here. How was that experience raising funds? Like, how do we even start that? Like, I didn't plan to talk about this, but I'm just so curious.
Well, I mentioned I had a mentor that kind of showed me how to, through my own experience, how to build a business and build a brand and actually build a real estate portfolio. And through that experience, that gentleman's son became a really good friend of mine. And to this day, he works with his father in venture capitalism. They actually run just a family office. Just a really, really bright guy that I went to him and just said, hey, when people come to pitch you, what works? And I just kind of got coaching from the other side, because he's a buyer. Yeah. And I asked him how the sellers do it. And he kind of showed me the ropes. And, I think anyone out there that's trying to start a business or even run and keep a business going, you cannot have enough people in your network, enough advisors, enough mentors. And really throughout this process, the more I've talked to smart people, the more I've learned. And I just try to be a sponge. That's probably the best advice I could give anybody.
Yeah.
Is just to ask and just ask. And there's a lot of great people out there, smart people, successful people that are pretty good with their time if you ask nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it happened. I learned from those guys.
I love that. And I think that that sounds so simple, right? And I think that I always say, like, nothing in business is really, truly that hard. Like, there may be hard decisions to make. They're like, it comes down to a basic principle of asking questions and making relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's so great about our chamber is that that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on
Oh
is
yeah.
being able to make those relationships. I think about when I started my business. I had a mentor who was running a 7-figure marketing agency in the city, and I was like, "Girl, so like, how much do I charge for this?" This man said he wants me to run the entire marketing department of this startup, but like, they're only gonna make this much money. Like, it's confusing. So, oppositely, what was your first fuck? Why did I do this moment? And I feel like I'm having those so often, especially during COVID. I'm like, God, why did I decide to be the boss? Why?
Well,
Why?
it's not easy to start a business and get it running. The first moment for me was trying to get financing to buy the building. We had a strong bit of capital. We were prepared to put as much as 30% down to purchase the building, the real estate. And I talked to probably 25 or more banks, at least 25. And we'd get close, but we couldn't get over the hump. I went through the SBA twice. You can only go 3 times, then they kick you out, and they don't let you go back anymore.
Oh, wow.
And each time it seemed as if we were going to be approved, and yet we weren't. It's just it was really tough. So I had to rally the investors because we were ready to go, and yet we were stopped. And we had to explore different ways of alternative means of financing, including leasing. And I was fortunate enough that the owners of the Boulevard Arcade, a couple of great Oak Park guys, Paul Beckwith and Richard Talaski, liked us enough and liked our business enough that they put together a series of short-term leases, kept our purchase agreement, and are allowing us the opportunity to kind of prove our business model and then still buy the building. So thankful to those guys, thankful to my investors who got creative with us, discovering different ways that we could do this. But yeah, banks. Sorry, bankers, but you loan the people the money that don't need it, and the people with good ideas that do need it, you make it real tough on us.
Man. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. I mean, I will probably never take a loan out. I tell my team that all the time. It'll probably change at some point. Every time I think about like going to a bank and like the whole like pageantry of like, oh, you have to have this and this has to happen, you have to do this. I'm like, look, I'm like a pretty decent person. I'm like kind of a big deal around here. Can you just give me like $100,000? Like, I will tell everybody that you're fabulous. Like, can we just like can we talk this out, guys? You know, I just go see Susie Goldschmidt over at Byline Bank over there. Maybe she got me. um, Obviously, you know, there are a lot of hurdles to get over in business, but what does it mean for you to hustle, and how do you do that every day?
I don't want to toot my horn by any stretch here because I make a ton of mistakes and screw a lot of things up. But hustling has been in my blood almost my whole life. I had my first job working for my grandfather when I was 12, and I've had
Oh,
a
wow.
job. I've had a job ever since then. And so my grandfather and my uncle, to a large extent, taught me how to work hard. And then I had a couple of other bosses along the way through high school and stuff that weren't family members that showed me how to work even harder. And so I've always hustled and got up every day and answered the bell and worked really hard. I, I can outwork most people, but I just always struggle with working smart. And so that's a work in progress. And I admire people that can get more done in less time than I can. Usually it takes me longer to get things done. I get it done and I stay there till it's done. And it's right. Sometimes it's maybe too perfect, but that's just the way I was raised. And it's just been with me for as long as I can remember.
I feel you. Like I find myself telling myself throughout the day, get gritty, Darian, and just like get through this and like get it done. I started working at the age of 14, at the Buzz
So
Cafe in South Oak Park, and
pretty
like
young, yeah.
you know, like and It's funny. So I think that my level of thinking that I'm working hard is a very different idea than most people. Because I talk to my therapist, she's like, "Darian, you work like 80 hours a week. What do you mean you don't work enough?" And I'm like, "I just don't think I'm hustling hard enough."
Hustling in the other sense of the word.
If you had one advice for entrepreneurs, what would it be?
Well, it's a tough question and a tougher one in the times that we're in. You got to have perseverance. I think you have to love what you do. Let's put it this way. I got the most out of the tire industry. But when I decided to leave Bridgestone, I think I probably could have got a loan from the bank if I wanted to start a tire store because I had all that experience and I had a great backing from one of the best companies in the world. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to get up and do that anymore. And so I think if you're going to go off and work by yourself, you got to love what you do and you got to persevere. You have to know that there are going to be mountains to climb and hurdles to leap over. But you just got to, work your way through them. Have a good network. Have a good network. And then maybe the last thing, I'll selfish plug here is find a good community, find a good place where you can grow that network and bounce that network on a daily basis. That's something that we're trying to provide here for the businesses that we'll be hosting is a good community, strong culture, and a network that can not only help them do their day job, but help them grow their brand and their business.
I think that's so important. I think about like when I'm my like most productive and like it's usually after a networking event. Like the energy that I have after I've like talked to people and talked about where my business is and listened to where their business is and like talked about connections. That's when I'm my most productive. Like
Hmm.
I've come home from bars and like written entire websites in one night because like I've been on such a high.
Yeah.
And that may be my extroverted self, but like I think that's so important. I also think it's so important for accountability, right? I always say whenever I tell somebody that we're doing something at DM Burton, it makes it more real. So like if I'm like, oh yeah, we like this is like what our sales goal is, like I'll like actively tell like I'll talk to Liz about it. I'll talk to like different like people who I know like aren't gonna think that I'm just like flexing. I think it holds me accountable and I think that's so important. And I love that you guys are doing that. So, we talked about the history of the building, but are there any further plans to kind of pay homage to the fact that this was a store? I asked this, thinking about was it Tuesday or Wednesday being the anniversary of the 19th Amendment and paying homage to women's suffrage. Curious if you guys have any plans on how to, bring those ideas into what you guys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things. Number one, we're exploring with some curators as well as the Oak Park Art League and the Historical Society about what's the best way to tell the story of the Boulevard Arcade inside the building itself. So whether it's new art, photographs, or maybe even a collection of old art, we plan to do that, and we're exploring some ideas, including even a new mural upstairs in the atrium is one of the working ideas. So taking our time, but we're gonna nail that down because we want the story to be alive in telling itself, whether I or someone's there to tell it in person. I mentioned the Oak Park Art League. This is a small caveat, but we're partnering with Jill Kramer Goldstein and Maria Gedrock. I hope I said your name right, Maria. And they're going to start doing exhibits here on a quarterly basis here in the arcade, both in the main lobby and then some of the space upstairs. We're really, really thrilled about bringing the community, bringing new art into the space and just keeping everything alive and fresh. From that, we'll obviously generate some programming, people coming in to see the exhibits and receptions. And programming is something that we are very, very keen on. You haven't asked me about marketing yet, and I'm a marketing guy, so I'm a little bit offended. But
Oh my gosh, that's coming up next.
wait.
Wow.
Let me just jump.
Wow, just gonna jump ahead there.
Let me just jump ahead and say that I believe that programming is one of the best ways to build your business, this type of business, and build a good community. So whether it's the Art League, the Chamber of Commerce, the Historical Society, or many of the other great groups of people and organizations out in Oak Park, when we get past this horrible pandemic, We're going to open up our doors and bring them in, let them use the space, and hopefully through those programs, we'll find some fabulous new members. And so that's something that's important to us and something we look forward to doing. Even on a micro level for the next few months, we can do things on a small level, but eventually on a bigger level. It's a great place. It's a good place to have a business meeting or a reception or a celebration of the right size.
Well, now I feel like my question about marketing is a little passe, but
You
how
could
do you plan on getting ingrained in the fabric of Oak Park and getting the name out there for cross function?
Well, honestly, it's programming. That's the number one thing, and the chamber, of course.
Oh, nice save, nice
And the chamber, of
save.
course. I've actually worked with a lot of chambers, managing multi-unit business operations really throughout the country, but a number of years throughout the Midwest. I don't know how many chamber events I've been to in cities and communities around the country, but it's a ton. And I can honestly say, and this is not a plug for Cross Function, it's a compliment to Oak Park. This Oak Park River Forest Chamber of Commerce is one of the best I've ever been engaged with. It starts, I think, with leadership and what Liz Holt does. It really took me by surprise and impressed me from the very start. And a lot of people I've met throughout my brief time with the chamber at events and programs, just the genuine way they look to help business is really impressive. A lot of chambers, the people show up at the ribbon cuttings and, they've got their name tags on and their big scissors and their ribbons and welcome, welcome, welcome. And I see them looking at watches and computers and phones, and they seem like they're punching a ticket.
Yeah.
The folks in this chamber, they seem like they're the last to leave, and they're just asking you a lot of questions. And how can we help? And the follow-up. And I just have been really impressed. And even though we haven't tapped into all that the chamber can do, that's about to get real because we're going to use it and look forward to what it will bring us.
I love it. I love the chamber. That's no secret. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I've been involved with a lot of the chambers in the area, and I think there's something special about our chamber. And I think it has to go back and has to do with, how Oak Park's love of small business. We, I think a lot of people say shop local and they're like, oh yeah, shop local. But I think that has a real true meaning in Oak Park. And, I think that because our residents want to support such a vibrant business community, and those are people who are our shop owners as well. And, I just think it's beautiful. Obviously, as I sit here being a diamond sponsor. Um, but yeah. So I want to end this on a fun note. So my last question is, what startup do you think is disrupting their industry the most and why?
I should be able to answer this question better. I'm going to go back a few months post-COVID and talk about another shared commodity business, which, by the way, I think if you look back at the past 5 years, 10 years, shared commodity businesses are the ones that have been the most disruptive, the most successful, whether it's Uber or Airbnb, WeWork in this particular space. This whole idea of sharing things is magic. I can't believe I didn't think of it sooner, right?
Yeah.
It's just moving along. I mean, I've been reading about storage facilities and new places that do that. Shared transportation vehicles. It's just everyone's trying to find ways to share commodities. But there's one that I became really impressed with pre-COVID, and I'm sure like Uber, a lot of businesses, this pandemic is challenging them, but there's a company called Cargo. And essentially what they are is it's like a 7-Eleven inside an Uber. And they have some presence in Chicago.
Wait, what?
It's like a 7-Eleven inside an Uber. That's what I kind of call it. So imagine you waiting for your Uber to pick you up. And Uber sends you a menu of the products that are available inside the Uber. So whether it's chewing gum, bottled water, Tylenol because you've got a headache, a phone charger because you lost yours or you left yours at that seat in the airport, a granola bar because you're hungry but you don't have time to stop and eat, you're on your way to a meeting, and then a Red Bull because you're dead tired and you need some energy. They have all these products in a beautifully contained package inside the car, and then they've got backstock in the back of the vehicle. And it's a means for the driver to increase their revenue, because we all have read where Uber continues to, and Lyft continue to kind of take a little from the driver. This is a way the driver can make more money. But what incredible convenience to hop in and get in the car and have a Coca-Cola or a bottle of water or some chewing gum there or some breath mints right there at your disposal. And you can just add it to your Uber bill. I think it's an amazing company. It's called Cargo.
All right, so I am really disappointed that I am just finding out about that. Tylenol would have helped a lot of times. Well, that's really cool. Usually I answer these questions as well, and then as you were saying, I should have a better answer to this. I realized that I didn't have an answer to this. And my answer that I thought up in my head wasn't as cool as yours, so now I feel inferior for saying it, but I'm still going to say it anyway. Carvana.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, the car vending machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
One, because they advertise too much on Hulu, and I watch way too much TV given COVID. But, you know, I remember when I bought my first car. And it was just like the world's worst process. I'm like, oh, I like this car. And then they're like, oh, do you have like a co-signer? Do you have this? I'm like, I know. My parents don't love me enough to do that. Can you give me a car?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
But I love that they've just made that process so simple. I'm all about like automating services.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the big things that we're working through right now at DM Burton, is how to automate everything so that Darien can just pay robots and like 5 real people. That's never going to happen.
Your employees don't listen to this program, do
Nope, they don't. They don't. It's totally fine. I say ridiculous things all the time. But yeah, thank you so much, Trent, for sitting down with me. This has been great. And thank you for jumping inside the chamber.